Hi, I'm Tristan with Warehouse 49, and this is something new we're going to call Land Tech, where we take technology that we're trying to implement at the warehouse already have and explain to you how we use it and see if you can use it at home. Uh, what we have here for today is a 1U Supermicro server that I bought off eBay with the intent of being able to deliver virtual drives to our 16 computers. Right now, our issue is we have 16 2 terabyte drives in each one of our computers, and it adds weight to those computers. Also, that's 16 points of failure that we have in the warehouse. What we're hoping to do here is condense all that into one package and deliver those hard drives virtually. And we're going to do some cool tricks like deduplication to hopefully condense all those games down as much as possible so that each game doesn't take up the same amount of space. This server has 4 8 terabyte hard drives, SAS 6 gigabit. Normal hard drives that you see in your computer are usually 3 gigabit, a little bit faster for NVMe drives. 256 gigs of RAM, which is the equivalent of what most people have SSD capacity in their computers right now. We have that just in RAM. Also, kind of unique to this server is that it has dual 10 gigabit LAN ports, which is going to be super awesome for us to connect to our 10 gigabit switch that we have at the warehouse. Now, if you build this at home, you probably won't have that capability, but for you, 1 gigabit should be fine. For us, we're serving up a lot of clients. We want to make sure that we can get them the data as fast as possible, because that's one of the things that we need to think about is if we can't deliver the games to people playing fast enough, it's going to delay their their loading screens and everything like that. We don't want to do that, so we want to make sure we're delivering it as fast as possible. And to help with that, we have a 256 gig NVMe cache that we're going to be using with this server as well. For software, we're going to be using FreeNAS, and we're going to be delivering the virtual hard drives to the clients using iSCSI. And we'll show you that here in a minute. But basically, I wanted to show you kind of how small this thing is compared to like a desktop or something like that. It's heavy. It's just as heavy, but in a nice form factor. It has dual power supplies, so that if one power supply dies in the middle of a LAN party, we're not going to lose all the connections. Something that the dual 10 gigs are going to do is also provide a little bit of fault tolerance, so that if one link goes down, it's going to revert to the other one. Now, it will result in a little bit of a slowdown, but we won't lose full connectivity. It's something that we kind of do a lot of with our LAN parties, and have a lot of fault tolerance. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to boot it up. I'm going to log into FreeNAS. I'm going to show you step by step of how we're going to do things. I'm not going to show you how to install FreeNAS today, but if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you comment that below so we can make more videos like that. So let's go ahead and pop this into our test bench and boot it up. So here we have our server, our 1U server on our test bench, server cabinet right here. We're going to turn it on. I'm going to show you just how loud it is and why you probably don't want to have something like this maybe in your room or something, but if you have a dedicated home lab or something like that, it might be feasible for you to try. At least FreeNAS is definitely usable. I recommend you trying it. It's a great little operating system. This thing is, I'm going to warn you, is pretty loud. So if you have your volume up high, I would turn it down a little bit. It does even out a little bit, but still something that you don't want sitting next to you while you're playing video games. And to that point, this might not be something that you would want to do at home for just one person, but if you are a college dorm or something like that, or maybe you're renting a house with a bunch of buddies and you have a lot of computers and you want to save a little bit of space and things like that, this might be a good way to alleviate some of the space needs of huge games like Fallout with the 4K texture packs and things like that. So let's go ahead and turn it on, and I'll just show you how loud it is. Right away those fans start spinning. I do have it hooked up to the monitor over here. I'm just going to make sure that it's on. Cool. And so because it's the 1U, the fans spin a little bit faster than you normally would typically have in a regular server, because it has to push a lot more air across the processor and everything like that. And with these dual processors, it definitely generates a lot of heat. Sweet. We're booting up. And so now we're going to go back into the other room and start configuring. All right, well, FreeNAS is all booted up, so we'll log in and start the process. After logging in, you're greeted with a nice little dashboard usually. Has all your NICs and all your settings that you might need. Shows us that we have almost 256 gigs of total RAM there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to services. I'm going to make sure the iSCSI is enabled, which I did previously. And then I need to add a pool. A pool is simply a collection of devices, kind of like a RAID, if you will. So I'm going to create a new pool, create a pool. I'm just going to name it data for now. I'm going to select all the 8 terabyte drives here. And I'm going to make a VDEV out of it. It suggests RAID Z2, which is basically RAID 6, but it's different. But I'm actually going to do RAID Z. I don't need that much data redundancy for this one, just because they're just games, and they're going to be pretty easy to get back. So having one spare is kind of what we want to do here. Normally, so you lose, for every parity drive, you lose about a drive worth of space. So for RAID Z, you only lose 1 drive versus RAID Z2, where you lose 2 drives. About. And then now what we want to do is we have a 256 gig NVMe SSD that we want to add as a cache. We're going to hit add cache. We're going to click on the SSD there. We're going to make sure we have it over there. Everything looks correct. We're going to create. Yes, all the disk will be erased. Create pool. Cool. So now we have our data pool. It takes away 2 terabytes for itself, and the rest of it can be used. And so I'm going to go in here, and since normally it's not recommended to do deduplication because you need about 5 gigs of RAM for every 1 terabyte of deduped data. But we have plenty of RAM, and so we're going to turn that on. Make sure all this else is just fine. Advanced mode. Most of the stuff doesn't need to be worried about. So we're going to hit save. Now we're going to go to sharing. That's where we can share our iSCSI devices. Block share, since iSCSI is a block device, it can present the virtual hard drive to Windows as a hard drive. So you do what you want. So Windows is actually going to format it and everything like that. Instead of doing it all manually, we're going to hit the wizard. We're going to name it games. It is going to be our block device. It says I already used it. It must be something left over from before. So we're going to go ahead and delete all this stuff. Before I made the video, I wanted to make sure that I could do what I said I wanted to do. And this way we're not just going in it blind and coming up with a cool title for the YouTube video. Cool. So we're going to do the wizard again. So now we're just going to call this games, because that's where we're going to have all our games. Now you have 2 options, device or file. For the type, we want to choose device. And for what device we want to give it, we're going to create a new. And so basically we drop this down. This is the data pool that we have. So that's where we're going to actually be storing these iSCSI drives. We want it to be 2 terabyte. We're going to be using this for we're going to be using for a modern OS. Why not? Next. We're going to create a new portal. For discovery auth mode, we're going to hit none for now. It is a good idea to set up some sort of authentication, but for right now, for simplicity, we're going to hit none. For IP, 0000 means it's going to listen on all network interfaces. For initiators, We don't have to worry about that. Authorized networks, don't have to worry about that. And this just gives a summary of what we did. We're going to submit. And now we're done. Kind of. So in order to test this properly, we need to have two iSCSI devices that we're going to be using in Windows. So instead of going through the wizard again, I'm simply going to go up to our pools, underneath storage. And here is the games ZVol that we created. ZVols are simply just like basically folders underneath the hard drive. We're going to add another ZVol. This is going to be games 2. We want this to be 2 terabyte as well. And we're going to use sparse. So what sparse means is that we're going to be thin provisioning it. This way we don't use up all the space right away. It will actually grow as we need it, up to 2 terabytes. We're going to save it. Now we're going to go back to our games one. We're going to make sure that it is also, I don't know if we can set it as sparse. No. So that's the one disadvantage of using a wizard, is that you cannot set that right here, but that's fine. At least we got the deduplication going, and as you can see, it's not read-only. Deduplication is on. We're using compression, and how much we have used here. So as you can see, the one that isn't thin provisioned went ahead and used up the full 2 terabytes, while the thin provisioned used only the bare amount that it needed. So that's something that is the difference between the two. And now we're going to go back to sharing, iSCSI. And we're going to go to extents. We're going to add a new extent. And we're going to save. You can't have capitals. Device is going to be games 2. There we go. There's a games 2. And then we have to do an associated target. We have to do the same thing for the target. We have to add one. Target's going to be games, but we're going to use the games 2 folder. A little confusing. I'm not an expert at this, but watching some YouTube videos, reading a lot, this was the procedure to how I got it to work. And so now we have 2 iSCSI devices. Now in Windows, they make it super easy to add iSCSI devices. We're going to launch the iSCSI initiator. It's built in. And you're simply going to put the IP address of your FreeNAS server. And since FreeNAS is looking on all devices, it sees it. That's what we want. Done. And that was pretty much all we had to do to get it connected. We right click on our start menu, we go to disk management. It's going to pop up saying, hey, there's these 2 devices that you now have. Now we need to format them. Okay. So here they are. They're online. New simple volume. And if we wanted to, since they're block storage, we can even RAID multiple drives together now, even though they're stored on a different computer. Yeah, we'll assign it G. This will be iSCSI. Next, finish. This is going to be iSCSI 2. H. Just so it's a little bit easier for us to know which is which. Cool. So now we have 2 iSCSI devices that are stored on our server. And Windows sees it just as a normal, regular other device. Now, what can we do with that? Well, if you go into Steam, into the settings, what we can do is go to Downloads, Steam Library folders. We can add another Steam Library folder. So these are our 2 SCSI drives. So we're going to go to G, New Folder, Steam Library. Make sure that's selected. Whoops. Select. and now it's listed there, 0 bytes of 2 terabytes. And because of conversion, it's not straight across line 2 terabytes. Close, okay, and now we can start downloading games. For my test, I've been doing PUBG because it seems to be a pretty big game. Install under our G library. That's our iSCSI device. Next, I agree, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll start that download. And it should be pretty similar performance as what you'd see if you downloaded to a regular spinning disk, maybe even a little bit better at times, depending on how many people are hitting that drive. So it's allocating the disk. While that's happening, let's see if we can't find another file that we can copy over. Well, first let's go to our shell here on FreeNAS. And what we can do is do zvol, which are z volumes, or ZFS volumes, and then list, and it's going to list, I think it might be zdev. Nope. I totally forgot the command. That's all right. Zpool. There we go. That was the right one. And what's nice is that if you ever need to know that command again, you can hit the up arrow and then you can do it again. And so right now we can see that our dedupe is, the first time we ran it 1.1 and now it's 1.06. So that means our download probably just started and there's not a whole lot to dedupe. And what deduplication means is basically if you have two files that are the same size, same everything, they're the exact same file, don't write it twice. Simply refer to the original document in place. So in terms of games, if two people download PUBG, it will only save one copy of that file. Now, if things change in that file, it won't actually save both copies. It has to save both copies because they're different at that point. Even though they might have the same name and everything, the files need to be exactly the same. So after this is downloaded, we will go ahead and duplicate it to show that it will work. And then with any luck, if everything's working, this dedupe percentage will go up. And the more it's deduping, the more it will, then that number will rise. It does take up a lot of RAM. Like I said earlier, for every 1 terabyte, it needs about 5 gigs of space, so of RAM. So that's why we have so much RAM there. Plus, ZFS likes to cache stuff inside of RAM anyway. So we have, even though we have 255.9 gigs of RAM in the system, you'll see that the ZFS cache will steadily rise with the more we use it because it's storing the most recent and most active files into RAM, and that will help speed things up, especially for things like loading up games. Maybe if you load up a game, it'll store it in ZFS. When your friend loads up that same game, it should also grab it from RAM. So we're going to go back to our shell. We're going to go up, we're going to hit the up arrow, we're going to hit enter, and we'll see it's 1.01. So it will go down before it goes up because there's no duplicated data on there yet, except for like system volume information on the two iSCSI drives. So we'll come back, we'll pause there, and we'll come back as soon as this game is downloaded. Alright, well, the game hasn't downloaded quite yet, but we do have a driver CD that I downloaded earlier for the server, and it's about 4.5 gigs, and so I copied it here to our first iSCSI drive, right? And when we go here, we see that we have still 1.01x of deduplication because there's not many at all duplicate files. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to copy this file over to our second drive, paste, and it's going to go pretty quick. 430 megabyte per second. That's pretty darn quick. Yeah, I mean, because it takes up cache and then it kind of goes back down to sub gigabit speeds. I'm only connected to that server with a 1 gigabit connection, not the 10 gigabit link. But there is some caching involved, and that's where you get that fast speed. And then it normalizes back underneath the gig. And if we go back to deduplication, see, now we're at to 1.10%. And we can keep going there. So we'll create a couple new folders. And we'll just paste it in there a few times. There we go. And even though we are copying it from the same drive, it's still hitting our computer a little bit, so download speeds will go down slightly because of that. And we're not like increasing your internet speed, we're not increasing network speed, we're simply moving the data from your computer onto a server that other people can also keep their data on. So that's something to note. We're not increasing anything crazy, we're just taking the amount of hard drive space I need physically in this computer and moving over somewhere else. Which is great for people who might have really small NVMe drives who need more space. This is a great way to put that space somewhere else while keeping your computer small and not having to buy super expensive large format NVMe drives. So even while this is running, what we can do is we can go check out what our deduplication is right now. So 1.4 now X. So we are definitely getting some good savings. Now, if we go down to storage, goes back to pools, you'll see that we're still using up space to the system. The system still sees us as using up that space, and compression is also helping us a little bit too. But in the back end, we're actually deduplicating that, so we can actually store a lot more than the 20 terabytes that are in our system because we're deduplicating some of that. Go back to the shell, we'll go back up, and so now you can see we're at 1.5% duplication, and we're still copying files over. And we can go back into our other one. There we go. Hit a few more new folders here, and we'll just copy that same file into those folders too. There we go. So now we have them copying there, and we're just going to see our deduplication go up even further. Now, I noticed this before, but again, it only dedupes stuff that's the same. It won't dedupe. Like if you have two movies, different movies, and you put it on the system, it won't dedupe that because they're not the same. They have to be the same. Now, if a game uses up the same file somewhere in the game as another game, it will dedupe that. But the files would be exactly the same, just basically a copy of it. That's going to take a little bit, but we can still see that we're getting even better deduplication here. So that's what we want to do at the warehouse, is that we want to be able to not only provide storage space for all 16 computers, but we also want to make sure that if we add more computers or more devices, that we can put them on the same storage pool without adding 4, 5, 8 more devices, hard drives, whatever it may be, to those computers. And we can take those 2 terabyte drives out, and it will make them lighter. There will be one less thing that we have to worry about breaking. Of course, if the server breaks, then the whole thing shuts down. But we still have room on the NVMe drives that we are not, but SSD drives that we have in there. So we still have room to put games if something fails. And a lot of people play 1 or 2 games, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal if we had to move back to the on-computer storage. And we have a lot more testing yet to do. So this is just, of course, here at the house. But we're going to move this over to the warehouse and see how it does there. We'll probably do a test and tune day. We haven't done that in a long time. and where we'll invite everyone out to play for free on the computers and just see how the performance stacks up and see how hard we can hit this computer or this server with our dual 10 gig links and see if it is feasible. If not, we'll keep the hard drives on there while we work it somehow and make it a little bit better. So this is FreeNAS. This is iSCSI. If you want to see more tutorials like this, let me know. Let me know how you think of the format, and we'll expand this further. We'll definitely do a part 2, just show you the performance that we have on the local LAN at the venue. But maybe you want to see more FreeNAS videos. Maybe you want to see some Unraid videos, or maybe some pfSense videos. Anything that you guys want to see, make sure you leave down below, comment and like. It looks like, so the reason why that popped up is because it disconnected for some reason. Yeah, for some reason. So that's another thing that with this is that we have to worry about, is the fact that files aren't really being committed to the hard drives themselves. They're being committed to like the SSD and the RAM. And so if there is a power outage or something like that, there is a chance for you to lose data. However, since it's games, you can just re-verify the games and download whatever is missing. So I need to now do some work on this. I'm sure it's there. It's just something that I did. Editor's note. The reason why I just saw that one folder there, the one file there, was because I was in that folder. I just had to back out one level. Everything was fine. Nothing was gone. That was just me not knowing what to do on camera. So, good news. But that's just an editor's note. I wanted to reiterate on that when I found out what I did wrong. If you want to see more, let me know. Hopefully this works out. Hopefully we can start using it. That'd be super cool, and we can put more devices on there. So with that, I'll see you next time. Make sure you subscribe and keep gaming.